All right, so today we're going to go way beyond just taking off and landing. We're diving into what I think is the true artistry of flying. We're talking about performance maneuvers, the very skills that take a pilot from being just okay to being a real virtuoso in the sky.
You know, it's a question that pretty much every student pilot eventually asks themselves. You've gotten the hang of takeoffs, you can land, you can get from point A to point B. You're competent, but how do you get to that next level? How do you become truly exceptional?
Well, the answer is all about making that leap. It's about getting past the point where you're just controlling the airplane and getting to a place where you truly feel and understand its every single movement. And believe me, this is where the real training truly begins.
So, how do you actually make that leap? We're about to break down the specific training exercises that bridge that huge gap between just knowing the basics and having that expert, intuitive feel for the aircraft. Look, every single pilot starts in the same place. Straight and level flight, some gentle turns, basic climbs and descents. These are the absolute building blocks. But once you got those down cold, a whole new set of challenges gets introduced to push your skills to their absolute limit.
And that challenge? It comes in the form of what we call performance maneuvers. Now, according to the FAA, these are not just fancy tricks. Oh no, they are very carefully designed exercises that make you deal with constantly shifting attitudes, airspeeds, and control pressures, all to help you develop something absolutely crucial, an intuitive feel for the airplane.
So let's jump into the first major trial. This is often the maneuver that really tests a student pilot's limits for the first time. We're talking about the steep turn.
Now, on paper, it sounds pretty simple, right? It's a turn, just, steeper. The whole point is to help you develop smoothness and coordination while you're under a little bit of physical and mental stress. But the reality of doing one, it is so much more intense.
So, what's it actually like inside the cockpit? Because that technical definition doesn't even come close to capturing the physical feeling of pulling a steep turn.
This is what it feels like. In a 60-degree level turn, the load factor is 2 Gs. What does that mean? It means you and the airplane feel twice your normal weight. It gets hard to move, your sense of direction gets a little fuzzy, and every single thing you do with the controls takes more effort. And this increased G-load has a huge effect on the plane's aerodynamics, because the wings now have to generate double the lift just to keep you from falling out of the sky. The stall speed, it just skyrockets. An airplane that normally stalls at, say, 50 knots is now going to stall at 70 knots in that same turn. All of a sudden, your margin for error becomes razor thin. And that's why you see these common errors. They're not just simple mistakes. They are the direct result of how difficult this is. Gaining or losing altitude, getting disoriented, forgetting to scan for traffic, it all comes from that struggle to manage those heavy G-forces and that tiny margin of safety. Okay, next up, we're going to look at two maneuvers that are basically opposites of each other, but they're both about having precise control over your altitude, and they both have some pretty critical real-world uses.
First, the steep spiral. I want you to imagine your engine fails and you're way too high to land at the spot you've picked out. This maneuver is a controlled, fast, gliding descent that is designed to keep you spiraling right over your target while you bleed off altitude quickly and safely. It teaches you to stay calm and be precise under some of the most extreme pressure imaginable. Mastering this can literally save your life.
And now, let's look at its complete opposite, the chandelle. This thing is an elegant, sweeping 180-degree climbing turn. The classic example is using it to escape from a box canyon or to get over an obstacle you didn't see coming. The goal here is simple. Trade your airspeed for altitude as efficiently as you possibly can, ending up at the highest point you can physically reach.
The chandelle is really cool because it unfolds in two very distinct halves. For the first 90 degrees of the turn, you set up a constant bank while you're continuously pulling the nose up, up, up. Then, right at that 90-degree point, you hit your maximum pitch. For the second half, you hold that nose-up attitude steady while you smoothly roll the wings back to level. And you're done. After 180 degrees, the plane is flying slow, it's high, and it's straight. It's just a beautiful way of managing the airplane's energy.
And now we come to the final maneuver. This one is often considered the absolute pinnacle of stick and rudder skill. This is the Lazy 8, a true ballet in the sky.
The FAA Handbook describes it just perfectly. I want you to imagine the nose of your plane is a pencil. And with that pencil, you are drawing a perfect figure 8 lying on its side with the horizon line slicing right through the middle. It's all about smooth, continuous, perfectly coordinated control. So let's trace that first arc together. The maneuver starts with a gentle climbing turn. As you pass through the 45-degree point of that turn, your nose reaches its highest point above the horizon, while your bank angle is still pretty shallow, only about 15 degrees.
Now as you keep turning towards that 90-degree mark, the nose starts to slowly fall back toward the horizon. And then, right at 90 degrees, you hit this magical point of perfect balance. Your wings are at their steepest bank, around 30 degrees. Your nose is exactly level, and your airspeed is at the absolute slowest it will be for the entire maneuver.
From there, the airplane just flows into the descending part. The nose gracefully drops through the horizon. By the time you get to the 135-degree point, you're at your lowest pitch attitude, all while you're smoothly rolling the wings back toward level.
And then you bring it all home right at the 180-degree mark. The wings are level, the nose is back on the horizon, and you've returned to your original starting airspeed and altitude. You are perfectly set up to begin the second half of the figure eight, but in the opposite direction. It is the ultimate test of coordination.
So when you look back at these 4 big trials, you can see a really clear progression. The steep turn teaches you control under high Gs. The steep spiral gives you precision in an emergency descent. The chandelle helps you perfect that balance of pitch and bank for a max performance climb. And finally, the lazy 8, it ties everything together, demanding total fluid coordination. Each one builds a specific and absolutely essential skill on that road to mastery.
So after all this practice, after going through all these trials, what is the ultimate reward? Well, it's a fundamental change in how a pilot even interacts with their aircraft.
You know, the FAA says it best right here. True mastery happens when you stop consciously thinking about every little rudder input or how much pressure you're putting on the stick. The mechanics of flight, they just become subconscious. You just feel what the airplane needs and you give it. It stops being a machine you operate, and it really becomes an extension of yourself.
And really, that brings us to our final thought. By mastering these performance maneuvers, a pilot develops this incredible, intuitive sense for the air and for their machine. So, you have to ask, is this the point where it stops being about mechanics and starts becoming an art form? Is this where a pilot stops simply flying the plane and actually starts dancing with it?